Go.
Go. Welcome, Adrian.
Hello,
So,
hello.
hello. I'm not sure. I said there's always a lag, but it's amazing to have you here. Audacious Conversations was an experiment to have conversation with people I love about courage, care, and non-conformity, which is my definition of audacity. So, with that in mind, why don't you introduce yourself with something audacious?
Well, look, thank you for inviting me to this. I've seen so many of the other ones, and it's been, I think we first had a conversation nearly a year ago to come on this. So I know there's a long waiting list. I'm really happy to be here. Something audacious about me. Well, I'd say there's a thread of audacity that's run through my life all the time, and it's something that I like to tell people that I love doing, which is doing the impossible. So all through my life, if I look back through my life, there's moments where there's times in my life where there's always been things that have felt impossible, whether that was, being an 8-year-old kid being left at boarding school on your own, having to fend for yourself, to joining the military and being the youngest officer in the Air Force and becoming a pilot, and then losing your job through an injury, and then having to retrain into another career, and the thread just continues. So for me, the audacity that I love is doing things that feel impossible, and taking that choice to go there, actually go there rather than resist it. So that's the audacity that I hold within me.
And that's why you're here, Adrian. That's why you're here. Yeah, absolutely. And I was really looking forward. I know it's been a long time conversation, and you and I were talking very briefly before we went live. My intention for this conversation is to really go with the flow. I mean, that's also very audacious for someone like me who loves to plan. So we stay present, and then we go with sort of the energy of the conversation. So where does your energy take you, under those sort of three pillars: courage, care, non-conformity, which we can go all of them or just one?
For me, courage is the one that stands out. I talk about three things that if you want to make the impossible possible, there's three things. And for me, that's purpose, really having a clear purpose of not only who you are, but, why you're here. Having the courage then to actually take action. And then the last one is around resilience. So when it doesn't quite go the way you want, how do you bounce back? And I think there's those three fundamental elements that will actually help you turn what feels really impossible possible. So courage for me is the word that really stands out. And interestingly, and when I went through military training, I finished my officer training, and I graduated as the youngest ever Royal Air Force officer and pilot at the age of 19, and I was awarded an award for courage and fortitude. So courage for me is the word that has always stood out for me throughout my life. Something that I really, I like to lean into it.
I love that. Courage and fortitude, an award, for that. That's amazing. And actually for me, courage is definitely, when I defined or redefined audacity, if you like, courage was the obvious one. That's what we know audacity for, being really bold. I think care it's a different element to it. And the non-conformity, again, absolutely everybody knows audacity for non-conformity. But the other thing for me that goes with the three of them is choice. Is this concept of, in order to be courageous, you need to make a choice, sometimes a really tough choice. Do you go left? Do you go right? And one of the stories that I remember so fondly, and I do tell my clients about, is it's your story about making those, that decision in 40 seconds, which I'd love to hear again.
The 40-second story.
The 40-second story.
Yeah, well, look, I think I shared this to our community about nearly a year ago, the 4PC community. And it was basically this, I work with a lot of individuals, I sit in a lot of board meetings, and the one thing that really really sort of niggles me is when people sit there not choosing to go one way or the other, and this gray space. And what I do is a lot of my work, because I still fly today, I use a lot of metaphors from flying. And I shared the story of I went up with my instructor, which I do, quite often, because I love to grow, love to learn new things. So I go up with my instructor, and he always likes to test me. And so we were on the runway and we are just about to take off. So I put full power on and got off to the end of the runway, pulled up, and we were starting to, the gear went up. I was starting to get the engine to the right RPM, the cylinder head temperature's correct, getting everything all ready, just about to call to the air traffic controllers to say, what my intentions were, when suddenly he just pulled the power lever of the aircraft and he said, "You got an engine failure." And in that moment, I was at about 800 feet above the ground. And although it wasn't a real engine failure, it felt like it. And the pressure was suddenly on, that you can't just sit in that moment going, or let me just reset, or let me think about this next week. You have to decide. And interestingly, in that moment, the one thing you don't really feel you want to do is point the aircraft to the ground, because that often leads to a bad decision. But if you pull the aircraft up because you want to stay in the air, the aircraft stalls. So you actually have to do the opposite of what you think is natural to you. So at 800 feet, no power to the engine, you've got literally 40 seconds before that aircraft is going to hit the ground. And it's your choice how it hits the ground. And that for me is, if I'm in a boardroom or if I'm working with clients, I often use that as a metaphor as to, what if you only had 40 seconds to make the decision that's going to change the rest of your life?
Yeah, no, I love that, because it's really, if you've only got 40 seconds, and sometimes I play, I challenge lovingly some of my clients, is you have 40 seconds to make a choice. Which choice would you make? And, I know it's not, as you said, it's, you sort of know, and yet you feel that pressure. And, one of mine, I started my book, The Audacity Spectrum, with a quote from the Benjamin Mee film, which is, all you need is that 20 seconds of insane courage, just 20 seconds of courage that will, will lead to something great.
Well, it's interesting, because in flying, there's three things they say when it's becoming really busy, hectic, or there's an emergency. They say the first thing you do is aviate, which is fly the plane.
I was going to say, what is that? Aviate. Okay.
Aviate is basically fly the plane, right? Take control and fly the plane. Make a choice as to what you do. Nose down, get some speed. Right. The next thing they say is navigate. Then choose which direction, where do you want to go? And then it's communicate. And if you don't get to communicate, you don't get to communicate. It doesn't matter. In that 40 seconds example, there's so many people that, in 40 seconds, you've got to go through a checklist, try and restart the engine whilst you're looking at where to put this aircraft into a field. You wouldn't turn back to the runway, because that's called the impossible turn, right? But you're flying the aircraft, watching your speed to make sure you don't stall the aircraft, and you're aviating, so you're flying. Then you navigate, so you go, right, where do I then want to put this aircraft down? And if you've got time, and only if you've got time, do you call up the air traffic and say, mayday, mayday, mayday. But that's the last thing you do. Whereas a lot of people today, they're straight into, I need to tell everybody this, I need to tell everybody that. No, just grab the controls and fly the plane. And that for me is, one of my mottos is pilot your life. Right. So for me, it's, before you think about anybody else, right, pilot your life. Take control of what you can do, take charge. And then when you've got charge of who you are and what you want, then you can navigate as to which direction you go. If you want to then talk about it, that's up to you. But don't let that talking be interference. that distracts you from actually taking the choices that you want in life?
God, that's fascinating, Adrian. Only because it's so counterintuitive. Certainly to someone like me, although I'm sort of action, and you said aviate first and then direction second. We hear a lot. You just need to know the direction. If you don't know where you're going, and then you communicate, because in the leadership, it's like it's all about communication. Communicate your intention, your purpose, your mission, and in your model is actually the third step.
Yeah. Well, and it is. And look, when you're planning something, absolutely. So if I'm planning a flying trip, I'll communicate the flight plan. I'll I'll phone up the air traffic controller or the air traffic in another place, and I'll say, look, I'm flying to you. Can I have a slot? So if you've got time to prepare a strategy, absolutely. But when the strategy is going in a different direction, then the key focus is be grounded with who you are. Go back to what are the basic principles. It's survival instincts. But if your survival instincts go to I need to scream for help for somebody else all the time, then how do you create the trust and belief that you can actually get through whatever you're going through in that moment? And that's been a challenge for me in my life. And it's taken me a long time to get to a point where I've had the belief in who I am to go, no, I've got this.
Yeah, no, I love that. And actually, I'm sort of curious, because one of the things that you said is it's, certainly in leadership, you don't fly solo. And I know you do quite a lot of work with teams, which is the one thing to fly your plane and you're sort of in control. Of course, you've got the co-pilot, but, when you've got a team around you, I'm curious, well, I've got more than one question, but I suppose what's the challenges that you've seen in the one of the biggest challenge maybe this year in the teams that you worked with, and maybe second, what are some of those principles that you brought from your flying days into your work?
Yeah, it's interesting. And firstly, if I can go back to something you said right at the beginning, because you talked about courage, care, and non-conformity, and the care piece comes for me about that. That's the teams piece for me. So the care is, who do you surround yourself with that is going to inspire you, that's going to support you, to have your back? And I talk about pilot my life. My other thing, as I talk about, is that great leaders don't fly solo. And if you look at the top leaders, they've all got mentors, coaches, teams, people around them that are supportive in everything that they need and they do. So for me, teams is that's the element of this. And for leaders, developing the teams and the team dynamics is key. That for me is a make or break of any business. And my personal belief is, if you feel that you're a leader that can go into business and not work on the teams, then your fundamental product, which is your people, will fail. It's your DNA. Teams are the DNA of the organization. It's the program, the coding of the computer game, whatever. It's everything that brings the business together. And so for me, working on the dynamics of how teams work is critical. So I was out in Switzerland working with a team on an offsite for 3 days, and incredible business, doing huge things, growing substantially. And yet when you get down to it, they were so ambitious as a team. They all had their own things, but what they weren't doing is slowing down to go, what's our common purpose? So if I come back to that place of possibility, for me, it starts with purpose. And so the number one thing when working with teams is, let's define what your purpose is. Your purpose can be as an individual, but then how does that also then link to a team's purpose? And often it's an oversight.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, it's so many things going through my mind, because purpose, our dear friend James Madigan, who actually opened this Audacious Conversations, he was the first guest that I had last year. But, his whole work is on purpose. That's what he does. And then when we work with the team, one of the models that we use, which you probably know it already, but it's sort of the Patrick Lencioni's principles, and it's the 5 dysfunctions of a team. It's all about the purpose. And he uses the metaphor of a boat. You have to all row in the same direction, because you get, of course, maybe someone gets tired, but it's about finding that purpose and then building everything from trust up to the results.
Yeah. And it's amazing. I'm keen to hear your thoughts on it, but how many people don't even get above the first level of transactional trust? Because then you get into, vulnerability trust and stuff. And that's where I think a lot of people don't even go there. What if you did? What if you dared to play in that arena as a business, where you could share things in a way which is far more courageous, audacious?
Totally. And, so daring, again, I think I was sharing with you, there was, I often listen to Steve Bartlett's podcast, and he had Brené Brown recently. I think she was a recent guest, and her definition on trust, which is sort of braving, but also the jar, the marble jar, and trust, that it's really in small, very small moments of actions, of choices, that we build the trust. It just doesn't happen overnight. And it's the same, I suppose. Military will be similar. You get a leader who just, it's in crisis, and they want everybody to rally around them.
Well, that's it. I mean, if I go back, crikey, 1995, when I went through my officer training, the whole purpose of going through your training in any military field is for the realization is you can't do it alone. If you think, and you have the mindset that you think you can get through something on your own, then you're not the right person. You're not the right caliber. So it hit me about 6 weeks into my officer training. And this is the first 2 months are kind of the months of hell, right? You are up constantly. You are polishing every bed spring, buckle, boot, toilet seat, everything for inspection the next day, and then for it to just be ripped up and pulled upside down and told to redo it. And I got to about week 5, I think it was, and I just started to feel myself breaking. I was like, I can't do this anymore. I can't do this. Right. And I remember going to the phone, and I picked the phone up to my dad, and it's one of the most inspiring conversations I've had with my father. And I said to my dad, I don't know if I can do this. I was that 8-year-old boy watching these fast jets taking off, going, I want to be a pilot. Top Gun came out, I want to be a pilot. And I was going through this, going, I don't know if I can do this. And he said to me, he said, look, whatever you want to do, it's your choice. Make a choice. However, before you do that, go and have a conversation with the person in the room next to you, in the barracks, in the room next to you in your barracks. And so we put the phone down, and I walked back, and I went to the room next door to a gentleman called Rob, and I said to him, Rob, I don't know if I can do this. And I just broke down. And he looked at me, and he broke down in front of me, and he said, I know. And it was at that point we realized it's not about could we do it individually. It's how do we support each other to do it. And when you get that, when you get that whole camaraderie as a team, then you have other people's back. You've got the support. So, inspection comes, I'm running around to his area of the barracks, and I'm going, have you checked this? Have I checked this? Whilst he's checking my kit. You suddenly realize it's not just about yourself, it's about everybody. And where do you take that care piece to supporting others?
I love that. That's such a wonderful story, because it is about having each other's back. And, you're talking about transactional trust and, vulnerability trust is when you break down, you give someone else's the permission to do exactly the same. And suddenly you've got that moment of gelling and trust. And we, that commonality, because that's how we build it. Amazing. And then you went on to get the award for courage and, what did you say? Courage and
Courage and fortitude.
fortitude. I
Courage
kept
and
thinking it's
fortitude.
resilience. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was, so I got injured through training. So I had a really serious knee injury. But one of the things, that team piece came together. You think about some of the challenges you do. You're on a 16-mile with full kit. You've got to do it as a team. You've got stretchers to pick up and loads of different stuff. And the officers were saying to me, look, Adrian, if you can't do it, we'll let you just pull out of this one. And I was like, no way. No way. I am not going to stand on a parade square at the end going, yeah, well, I didn't do that. I didn't do that. I wanted to feel proud that I'd achieved it. But it was me achieving it, but it was the team that could actually help me. So that was really powerful for me.
Yeah, I mean, it is. It's one for all for one, I suppose it is. It's that sort of cliche. It's interesting you said that if you only think about yourself, you are not, I suppose you don't qualify in many ways, because if the cliche of, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together.
The African proverb. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
And it's so true. And I think it comes back to your, audacity. It's that balance between arrogance and actually boldness and, real true courage, vulnerable courage, courage to, vulnerable to care for people around you, actually to speak out, to say, how you're feeling and stuff. So for me, that was, certain moments in my life where it's kind of like really stood out for me. But I'm a total believer that, yes, although if I go back to the beginning, which is where we're talking about the story around, believe in yourself, absolutely. And when I know James talks about, find your purpose, find your why, and Simon Sinek always talks about, what's your why? When I work with a lot of clients, before I even go to the why, I go to the who.
Mm-hmm.
Like, who are you? That's the piece I believe people miss. Actually having the opportunity to, we normalize our life so much of the time. And when I talk about my life, I kind of brush over, oh yeah, I flew to France the other weekend and blah, blah, blah. And people are going, what? Hang on a minute. What are you doing? And, we're talking about the other thing I'm doing at the moment. And, I do some crazy stuff and I love it. I love taking myself to the edge of my horizon and playing there. But for me, I don't really talk about it that much because it just feels normal to me.
Yeah,
I'm a big believer that everybody has an audacious story. It's just how they want to tell it.
No, you're going to have to tell me now. What's the other crazy stuff? Because you said about the crazy. I don't know.
Well, before the call, we talked about the fact that this year I started DJing. So I've got another room, which is now my music room, and it's got a full set of decks. I've launched the YouTube channel. I've got 5 recordings, mixes on there, and I love music. I think music is a fantastic way for finding your emotions, grounding yourself. I often put music on to if I'm doing preparing for a workshop or something. So yeah, music has been such a great part of my life, and I've always gone to these raves or these gigs, and I've gone, oh, what are they doing? How they, when they're playing with all those buttons and levers, what's actually going on there? And curiosity kicks in, and I'm like, what if I just had a go? What if I could do that? So that was this year's intention, is to learn to become a DJ. And next year's audacious thing that I want to do is go and play in Ministry of Sound in London.
Ta-ra! And so
Ta-ra.
it is.
And so it is. And so
that's such an amazing intention to set. Actually, it's because it's playing with the impossible, as you said. It's and yeah, it's dreaming big, as my dad would say, people who dream big live big in many ways, because it doesn't cost anything to dream and set intention. And it's just, you reminded me, because I grew up, my dad used to love his quotes. Seneca quotes is what he what I sort of grew up with. And I do use one of those in my own book, which it's something like, I never remember it properly, but it's not because things are difficult that we do not dare. It's because we do not dare that things are difficult. And it's this learning mindset.
Love
So,
that.
the why not, because that's what you said, actually, is like, why not? Why can't I learn this whenever I want to? And that's actually, it's a big philosophy that I have lived my life. The why not, when people say, why do it? And it's like, why not do it?
Well, it comes back down to what we were talking about earlier about make a choice. Because I could get to another 10 years time and I could go, oh, I always thought about doing it, but I never did. So this year I said, well, why not have a go, find out if it's for you, and it may be it's not for me, and then I can just do something else, move on, retire that and move on to something else. But as you said, if you don't dare to do it, you'll never find out.
And it's all about experimentation. Actually, life is an experiment anyway. And for me personally, that's why I so love your concept of a 40-second decision, or a sort of 20 seconds insane courage in many ways, because it's about trying and finding out. So, I usually, it costs me a lot of things in life, but I'm going to jump, find out. And if it doesn't work, it's one experiment down, next experiment. And I also loved what you said. It's not, it is about the why, but it's about the who, which is an incredibly difficult question to answer. And again, it's one of our dear friends, Rita. She's always says, not about the who, the how, the what. Sorry, no, it's not about the what, the how. Yeah, the why. It's about the who.
Yeah.
Who can help you? That concept of the we that you said. It's who do I know who may know someone else, and so on. So I'm really excited. I'm really excited about the Ministry of Sound.
Well, I'll let you know. I'll be in a side room and I'll be playing. But that's the thing. And I went to a gig the other week and I was listening to one of the DJs at the beginning, and I said to my partner, I said, I could do that. I can do that. And that's the shift I've had over probably the last sort of 5 to 10 years, is that belief of actually not normalizing who I am and recognizing what I can bring, and then doing it and actually having an impact.
Amazing. I love it. Just going from a pilot to, I suppose a master advisor coach, and now to a DJ.
My kid, it's so funny because my children say, oh, my daughter's just left school, but my son's still at school. But when they get asked, oh, what do your parents do? What does your dad do? And my daughter's always like, what do I say? Because you do some strategy work for this business. You're a coach. You fly planes. You're a D. What do I say? I say, just tell them what you want. Just make it up. Yeah. Make it up.
A maverick. He's like, my dad on a Monday, he's a DJ. On a Tuesday, he flies the planes. On a Wednesday, he goes to, wherever. Why not? You sort of choose.
Well, when I was a pilot in the Air Force, nobody ever believed you, right? So you'd go out and people would go, oh, what do you do? And you say, oh, I'm a pilot. And they'd be like, yeah, of course you are. So in the end, I just ignored it. And then I just make up something stupid. Like, I'm a dolphin trainer, or, I run a zoo or something like that. So, I just said to her, just say what you want.
Yeah. She's got a lot of things to choose from. So I'm sure that's not, it's a challenge, but it's a quality challenge to have.
So if I gave you 20 seconds now, what's your audacious thing for 2026?
27. For me, which is, it's interesting, we're talking, is what Rich coached me on this Audacious Conversation a few weeks ago. It is really developing that land in Transylvania to become a center of excellence. So it's expanding. It's bringing. I would love for you to fly there. We actually had a group of 6 pilots coming from Germany, and literally they landed and they had. So it's possible. Even my sister, Toma Audacity, she said, "Oh my God, Aline, I know people come on holiday. They come by train and they came by also, but I never thought that you could also fly. There's a small, 2-seater." So that's my. I don't know how. I sort of know who, not yet, but that's my. It's the next 5 years, but it's starting in 2026.
Expansion.
Expansion. Yeah.
Dare to go there.
Dare to go, and then actually do use more of that. Just bring my community. The people who I love the most. Talking about the we, because we become the average of the 5 people we spend most time with, and yeah. And I'm aware that we are, well, at time, I know we could probably talk about it for another half an hour. You're going to have to come back. So tell me about, I know did you say you have a YouTube already or not yet?
Yeah, I've got a YouTube channel.
Yeah, I know. You're not going to get, you have to tell me about that.
I will. I mean, it's my DJ name is Digby, but it's DGBY. So I missed the I out. So if you go onto YouTube and you search DGBY, then that's my channel. So that's me starting to actually put more stuff out into the universe.
And that's audacious. I mean, actually, so I'm going to finish on that note. I mean, I put all of my Audacious Conversations on YouTube, so yours will be up there probably in a few weeks' time. And it's purely just as a depository. It's there. It's a place for everybody to come and go and see it. So my invitation to anybody who's watching this is to check you out and check this YouTube's for fun stuff that we dare to put out there.
Dare to play.
Dare to play. Fabulous. Well, it was great to have you on, Adrian.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Love it.
Thank you. And then to be repeated. Thank you.